The runestone had changed everything. Until that moment, the warriors of Skarnford believed the strange events across the north were separate disasters. Wolves returning to the forests, giants awakening beneath the mountains, monsters rising from the sea. But the Lost Runestone revealed a darker truth. These were not random awakenings, they were signs. Signs that the world itself was moving toward something far greater, toward Ragnarok. The journey back to the village was quiet. No one spoke as they crossed the broken valleys and shattered glaciers. The wind carried the distant sound of cracking ice across the mountains, and the black aurora flickered across the sky like a wound that refused to close. Leif walked beside the old seer Holdrik through the deep snow. He broke the silence. "You said the runestone showed a gate." Holdrek's voice was grim. "Yes," Leif pressed on, "and when that gate opens, Ragnarok begins." Holdrek nodded slowly. "But something else worries me." "What?" "The runes were broken." Leif frowned. "You think someone destroyed them?" "I think," Holdrek said, his eyes on the horizon. "Someone did not want us to see the full prophecy." They walked in silence for a while longer. Then Leif spoke again, his voice low. "If the prophecy is true, who is opening the gate?" Holdrek did not answer, because deep inside his mind, he already feared the answer. When the warriors finally returned to Skarnford, the village had changed. Smoke rose from several homes. The wooden watchtower at the edge of the settlement had collapsed, and the warriors guarding the gates looked terrified. Leif ran toward them. "What happened?" One of the guards pointed a trembling hand toward the northern forest. "They came during the night," the man swallowed hard. "Giants." The warriors rushed through the village. Entire houses had been crushed beneath massive footprints. Long, deep tracks carved through the snow where something enormous had passed straight through the settlement. But the giants had not stayed. They had only passed through, moving south. Holdrak studied the massive footprints, his face growing darker with each passing moment. "They are gathering." Leif looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "The prophecy said the mountains would awaken," Holdrak explained, "but the runestone also warned of something else." "What?" "The army of frost." Leif stared toward the dark horizon where the mountains stood silent beneath the glowing aurora. "You think the giants are forming an army?" Holdrak nodded. "Not just giants." That night scouts were sent into the forests. They returned before dawn, and their news was worse than anyone could have expected. Leif gathered the warriors inside the great hall. "What did you see?" The lead scout spoke slowly, his voice shaking. "They are moving south." "Who?" "Everything." The warriors looked at each other, murmuring in confusion. "What do you mean, everything?" The scout took a deep breath. "We saw frost giants walking through the mountain passes." Another scout spoke up, his voice strained. "And behind them, what creatures? Things we have never seen before." The hall fell silent. The second scout continued. "Massive wolves with glowing red eyes." Leif's grip tightened on the table beside him. "Fenrir's bloodline." The scout nodded. "But there was more." "What else?" "Creatures made of ice. Like men." Someone asked. The scout shook his head. "No, like soldiers." Holdrek stepped forward. The frost spirits. Leif turned to him. "You know these creatures. They are older than the giants," the seer said. "They were once the servants of the ancient frost kings." Leif slowly realized what was happening. The terrible truth fell into place. The giants are not just walking south. "No," Holdrik said quietly. "They are gathering." Outside the hall, the wind howled through the village streets. The black aurora pulsed again across the sky. Far to the north, something massive moved through the frozen valleys. Across the mountains, the frost giants marched. Behind them followed wolves. Behind the wolves came creatures of ice and shadow. And above them all, the dark aurora burned like a signal, guiding them forward. Deep within the northern glaciers, something ancient was calling them to gather, calling them to march, calling them to war. Leif stepped outside the hall. The cold wind struck his face as he stared toward the northern mountains. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. "If they are forming an army," Holdrik stepped beside him. "They are." Leif's voice hardened. "Then war is coming." The old seer nodded slowly. "Yes." Leif looked toward the glowing sky. "And if the army of frost reaches the southern lands," Holdrek finished the thought, "Midgard will fall." Far in the frozen north, the giants continued marching. Their massive steps shook the mountains. The wolves ran beside them, and the creatures of frost followed like an endless tide. The frost army had begun to rise, and nothing in the world of men was prepared for what was coming. If you enjoyed this Viking dark fantasy story, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of Frozen Saga. New monsters, ancient legends, and forgotten gods are awakening across the frozen north. This saga is far from over.